Hey everyone, how's it going? I hope you're all doing great and that you're following the 3H's of the channel. In this video, I have a couple stories from the Pacific Northwest, and they're definitely strange to say the least. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, pull up a stump with me and let's get into it. Thank you for watching. So this is what I believe is my friends and I's encounters with a shadow person or shadow being. When I was 16 years old, my paternal grandpa just died. I was thinking about death and stuff and kind of caught up in my emotions. I get talking about it with my friends late one night. We decided that we needed to figure out what happens after death. My maternal grandpa was a caretaker at a cemetery since forever, and I actually spent most of my childhood with him there. I suggested that we go there since I know the place like the back of my hand. Maybe we try and talk to ghosts or something. Everyone is stoked. We take off. It's about 15 minutes from my place. We go back several times and have encounters with minor things, sounds, like kids walking around and laughing, but we never felt any kind of threatening aura of any kind. But this one night, we were busking around the cemetery when my friend spots something. It's a shadow figure, about 6 feet-ish tall, and steadily making its way toward us. We think, no, we've had enough of this. We make our way to the car and just leave. Everyone is a bit shaky and laughing, trying to diffuse the situation. My friend who spotted the thing says, "Bro, something is following us." We try to ignore this, and we get back to my friend's house that we're staying the night at. Everyone is still a bit jumpy, but we've calmed down a bit, and we're ready to move on. We decide that we're going to watch The Evil Dead in this cool projector room that's at my friend's house. The one problem is, my Blu-ray is out in the car. I think, shit. Made another person decide to man up and just go to the car and get it. We get out there, we grab the disc, and we look up. That same shadow person from before is standing underneath of a lamppost. The thing is just standing there in full illumination. It's dark as hell and just looks like a vague human shape, but has disproportionate, distorted features. It's like it's shifting back and forth on its feet or something. It's about half a block from us, but it's very clearly there. I freeze. My friend with me flies into rage mode. He seriously charges this thing. It pops from one lamp to another that's closer in about 2 seconds, just after my friend starts running at it. He does a mid-run skid and turns tail pretty quickly. We both sprint to the house. We get inside and tell everyone what happened. Bricks were shat. We watched some cartoons instead of watching Evil Dead, and we just fell asleep all in the same room. Things were quiet for months, but that didn't last at all. And if you're wondering the time period of all this, it's around circa 2006. But I work up the balls to go back to the cemetery. That thing is there, but it doesn't approach us this time. But it's the same feeling of dread as the first 2 encounters. At this point, we decide, yeah, there probably is life after death, but this isn't worth it anymore. Sometimes we think that this thing pops up every now and then, always at a distance so we can be sure, but never close enough to really do anything. However, the next incident would be more dramatic. It's now winter, about 8 months since all this stuff went down. It's Idaho. The winter is brutal. The snow is finally melting. 45 degrees feels like 60. We decide to go for a cruise and look at the stars on the dry farms. We were cabin fevering really hard at that point. The dry farms are basically 30 square miles of basically nothing but potato fields, so the night sky is really awesome out there. So we're driving out there when this car starts riding my ass. I'm like, great, one of these dicks again. I slow down, hoping the dude will pass. He doesn't. Shit is getting creepy. I decide to turn on the side of the road to go around the block and continue on. The car stops at the head of the road and just sits there, watching us. I see in the taillights, it's a cop car. I'm thinking, why is a cop car riding us like that? I look up from my rearview mirror to see that same shadowy thing standing in the middle of the road with my lights on it. My instincts kick in and I swerve to miss it. The cop obviously saw it too because he whips around and heads back to town, hauling ass. We're in the middle of nowhere in these potato fields and we just saw this thing. We're not even anywhere near the cemetery, so we all freak out and take off back to town along with the cop. But this time is different. We're all feeling incredibly drained, like something took our energy. We all feel just very sluggish. But we get back to my friend's house. We don't even have the energy to talk in the car. We start talking about what happened after we get inside, if it's the same thing as before, etc. We decide that this thing might just be its last hurrah. We stay away from the cemetery and maybe it will go away. There's this feeling of malice that kind of lingers for about a month after, but eventually it finally fades. The rest of high school, we only go back to the cemetery twice, but these times, nothing happens besides the regular hearing weird noises. We had some weird lights in the sky though. A lot of people saw them. It was a triangle with lights on each side. Probably something from the Idaho National Lab and the government, but we don't see the thing again anytime that we go out. The memory fades. I keep in touch with all of my friends after graduation. I don't know if the lights were related to what we saw, I just figured I'd include it as a weird experience. So like I said, I keep in touch with all of my friends after graduation, especially the ones that I had experiences with, and this continues even to now. I moved out of the state after graduation, but the job didn't work out, so I came back to my hometown to save up and get my ass in school, and that was in 2011. At the time, most of my friends were still in town. One of them is getting married real soon, so we're kicking it, living it up before he ties the knot, mostly just bullshitting around town, walking around, going down nostalgia lane. Little did we know, we would discover the source of the entity, not expecting it at all, while we were wandering around. We live in a college town that's run by Mormons. My friend had joined the military. He had his house bought by said college so that they would tear it down and build shitty apartments. We were all pissed as we had some problems with Mormons, nothing really worth mentioning, but it's a whole different topic. We decide to break into the house since it's going to be torn down next week anyways. We're reminiscing about all the stuff we did while wandering from room to room. We start to get this creepy vibe. The friend that used to live there says, let's just get out of here. Maybe go somewhere else. The place is just kind of sad now, with nothing in it. As we're leaving, I swear to God that out of the corner of my eye, I see the shadow dart across the wall. I brush it off and continue all around our old haunts. My friend notices something. He says, "Dude, watch that tree for a bit." We see this shadowy head poke out around this tree. While we're watching it, I audibly say, "Effing hell." We decide to continue on. This thing hasn't actually done anything anyways. I notice it darting from tree to tree near a park that we were walking past. I finally had enough. I turn around and look at the face. It doesn't have any eyes. I yell at it, "You know what? F you. Just F off and leave us alone." I didn't even notice it after that. I still get the vibe that it was around though, like it just kind of blended in now. We decide to head back to the car and crash at my place. We put two and two together and figure that this thing was actually attached to my friend's old house. But we can't quite figure out as to why since we first saw it at the cemetery, not at his house. We don't really get any answers out of that. but we just continue on playing some online games later on. The topic is still fresh on our minds. I can tell that we're all thinking about it. I eventually ask him about it, and ask if they had any experiences that he didn't tell us about. But he says that his dad would bless the house to keep the thing in line about every 6 months or so. This made sense to me. His parents haven't lived there for a long time for the thing to be active. I didn't ask what he meant by blessed. He says that he was afraid people would think he was crazy. He didn't mention anything that happened because of that, but some really screwed up stuff happened. Stuff with it coming up to his window, watching him sleep, and things like that. We saw that thing all the time, and he never told us about any of these things that happened. Now, since then, these fancy, quote, luxury apartments have gone up. I kind of wonder if that thing still hangs around, but I kind of doubt it. That house isn't there anymore. And that's our experiences with this shadow being, the TLDR. A shadowy thing literally followed me and my friends around for the space of a couple years in high school. Years later, we discovered where it may have actually came from, and it wasn't the cemetery that we went ghost hunting in. So as of 2020, I have been having encounters with this thing for about 4 years. I don't know if you want to call it a crawler, a skinwalker, a rake, or whatever term suits you. For context, I was raised on a homestead. I volunteered for my local SAR a few years before this, and have been in the armed forces for 4 years. I've seen a lot of things, so not a lot phases me, and any time that I had to do 0 Dark 30 SAR calls, I used to listen to scary stories on YouTube. I guess to get myself in the mood. Maybe that's why I run into really screwed up stuff though. I also keep myrrh resin and white sage on me when I go in a woods for good measure, and I employ staves when I feel they're needed. So the first story. I live in the Pacific Northwest. There's a half-abandoned town 2 hours from where I live. Most of the people living there, or who have visited the area, always get bad vibes. There's also an old mine and some related structures that my friends and I used to always go to in high school for day hikes and for camping. About 2 years into having that be our usual spot, and specifically when we got firearms, we all just had bad experiences there. We all stopped going up there entirely, and I didn't return until after I got out of active military service and I went into the reserves. Some stuff changed, but for the most part, the area was untouched as it was before. The most vandalism you saw was maybe a few bullet holes, various places people made campfires, and names etched into the walls of the housing buildings. But some weird shit always happens around the area when I visit or my friends do, but that's coming up soon. The main point to capture is that I've pissed off this thing in the woods multiple times, and it likes to get back at me by screwing with my head or my friends' heads. IMO, these things, be them skinwalkers, crawlers, whatever, are more so very territorial, and are kind of like an extremely intelligent and equally sadistic moray eel when it comes to their curiosity and playfulness, for lack of a better term. This means that at least from what I can tell, they like to play with people's heads to gauge them, to see what they're up to, or maybe if they're worth the trouble of encountering. A skinwalker or whatever isn't going to go out of its way to screw with someone unless they feel like they need to, or they're very bored, in my opinion. I was visiting my friends after getting off of a month-long ADOS order. They want to do spooky shit. I asked them if they want to go to the designated spooky mine that we used to go to. We establish our comms, and we take a 2-truck convoy up into the woods. The party consists of myself, my National Guard pal, or Natty Guard as I call him. His name is John. My range buddy is up there too. His name is Jax, and their mutual California gal pal, who I don't like but I kind of respect, and we'll call her Pretzel. Pretzel, constantly bitches about driving on a mountainside back road while Jax and I do radio checks and hot mic for 2 hours. We get up to the housing building at 0130. We set up our VIX to easily get the hell out if we need to. We clear the housing building because, even though it's technically abandoned, when I used to do SAR calls, it wasn't uncommon for a hardy homeless guy or a dude who got sick of society to threaten people to go away or take pot shots at us with a Remington 700. The building is empty and I offered the lads Coke or White Claws, and they want to go up to the mountain and to see the actual mine. Everyone is strapped with comms and a kit, except for Pretzel. We have chem lights to keep tabs on where everyone is. The entire hike up, we don't really see a whole lot, but we see a lot of frogs and stuff. We joke about the frogs and we make other jokes, and the mood is generally pretty light. We get up the ridge where the mine is and we see 6 solar lamps, like those ones that you have on stakes and drive them into the ground. They're just placed randomly around the ground near the mine entrance. There seems to be no pattern or order. Keep in mind that these lamps only work for about 3 weeks to maybe a couple months before they just shit the bed, and these puppies look almost brand new. Additionally, there's a large metal sheet on the ground near the mine entrance that resembles what a bunker door would look like. Not that it was. I didn't have time to check, however, but this is the best visual representation I have for it. We pop our lights mounted to our rifles to get a better look of the area. My natty guard pal and I have ComTac 3s on, which enhance your auditory sensitivity, and we hear a voice a bit ahead of us, behind the trees, say something that's very, very low. We confirm that we both heard it, and we decide to get the other two, and maybe we should just leave. On the drive back, I ask him what he heard, since I'm fairly deaf after the military, and I only heard a vague sound that sounded like a sentence. We bounce back and forth and come to an agreement that it was either "Can I help you?" or "Can you help me?" This would already be weird enough, but this voice was uncomfortably low and hollow. We recap the night, and we both note that the pucker factor on the drive up until we hit the paved road was at a constant 6 with a max of 8. Pretzel hates us now. Jax wants to go up again, and my buddy and I are all trying to drink ourselves to sleep because our hairs are still on edge since we came back down. The good news is that there were no FU carcasses, and it was pretty uneventful, and it didn't charge at us. I think if anything, it was trying to see if my friends were good prey or something. I want to go back up sometime and apologize to it, maybe come to some respectful terms when I can before I move, because it's brought me a lifetime of stories and adrenaline. I feel bad for shooting at it so many times, but then again, charging at someone in the woods while screaming isn't going to be a friendly encounter, but also getting hammered and screaming "F you, you pussy," while pissing in front of where it hangs out isn't exactly nice either. To add more context, I've had up to 7 interactions with this thing in the woods, and each time, the gist of those was, the first one, it screams at my high school pal and I in a mix of a cougar, an elk, and some other animal that I've never heard of before, and tried to drive us off the trail and down into the valley and the bush thickets below. We end up mag dumping at it while going down the mountain away from it. 2. I get drunk with a buddy in my U who's babysitting me, and I convince him that we should go near there. I shoot out of his car where I heard it last, while pissing out the car window, shit-talking, and being as mean as I can be. I hit not 1 but 2 deer who dead sprinted toward his truck. I got a doe and a buck for the cost of 2 bullets and an insurance payment. Number 3. It was winter. I take 2 boot guys from my unit on a field kit winter hike as a favor to my section head. The plan was to have a 7-mile round-trip hike, since one guy lost his cold weather boots and only has the hot weather ones, and we didn't want him getting frostbite. We overshot and hiked 20 miles without realizing, and barely managed to hike back to the housing building to try and build a fire. We got arsenic poisoning from the pressure-treated wood we used. We wandered back at 2300, tripping balls on arsenic. All of us heard really weird noises on the hike back, and we kept seeing things at the edge of the trees, but we wrote them off as side effects. Number 4, I was driving with one of the boot camp dudes from the 3rd story to see if our shit show from the prior winter is still there, where we left it, and also pick up a mag that he lost in the snow because he was in boot camp. You make dumb mistakes. Halfway into retracing our steps, we hear a girl scream bloody murder. And when I say it was a girl, I don't mean it was a cougar. We can literally hear this chick screaming, "Please help me, oh God, it's coming," and other incoherent wails and babbles. As she screamed, the sounds became distorted and seemed to descend into cackles. After about 3 or 4 repetitions of that, we just effed off. The 5th story is a little more interesting though. It was 3 months after number 4. An industry friend from LA flies up to have me test some body armor that his company is making, and just to catch up on what we're up to these days. He always wanted to go out into the Pacific Northwest wilderness, so I take him to, you guessed it, the spooky mine. It's dark by the time that we get up there, due to Din Din taking longer and showing him the areas leading up to the mine. There's an abandoned truck sitting there, next to the housing building. Thinking that we were going to be up there for a bit, I start a fire where the engine block used to be before someone seems to have came and jacked it for himself. I prep some snacks for him and I run over firearm safety and other basics with him because he's Californian. I do about an hour of dry fire drills with him before showing him how to do 2-round transition drills. During this time, he keeps saying how he doesn't feel right being out here at night, but I didn't really care. We both load up some mags with 2 rounds. I tell him that I'm going to do the first transition, and all he has to do is watch and repeat. As soon as I squeeze the first round off, we hear similar screams to the first experience, but it's a mix of a cougar, an elk, and a bear, and then it slowly descends into the sound of a man, sounding like he's having his soul drained from his body. The scream was sustained for about 8 to 12 seconds. It was about 500 to 600 meters behind us, around the bend of the mountain. For context, the mountain has a 100-grade face, or about a 45-degree steepness to it. My LA buddy immediately screws off back to my truck, and I follow. I almost forget about the truck on fire, and I run back to put it out. The thing is still screaming in that loud as hell garbled scream, but now in shorter iterations. It's closed about 200 meters of 100-grade mountain face in less than 90 seconds. I'm already in caveman brain mode, so I switch the mags and dump half of it in its general direction to try and suppress it like it's a Terry or some shit. The thing immediately switches to the noise of a dog barking and slows down some. I put out the fire and douse the ashes. As I'm trying to put out the ashes with every non-flammable fluid in my truck, I keep hearing the same 2 dog barks over and over again. I dump another 2 mags in the direction of the barks, but this time, something else happens. For a split second, I can see it in the distance. I don't really get a great look at it, but I can just see its horrible face. I see its mouth full of teeth just curl into this wretched smile. I turn tail and just hop in my truck and drive us the hell out of there, but I can still hear the barking. My LA buddy is freaking the F out, asking me like 50 questions at once. Eventually, he repeats the same questions until I respond. Are there any houses up in these mountains? I said no. Every house in the town you saw on the drive up. He said, I don't know, I think there is. I asked why. It turns out the moon was red that night, and my LA bro mistook it for a fire or something, trying to rationalize the dog noises. He now refuses to discuss it anymore until we get back to the city. Apparently he still gets nightmares from the interaction occasionally, and will angrily text and call me when he wakes up from them, asking why I decided it was a good idea to take him up there. I usually joke about the fact that I lost my humanity in 2014 thanks to a shitty deployment, so maybe it's an advantage. But I've never seen someone so shaken up by an interaction like that. It was basically telling us to screw off and leave it alone, but maybe at that point it wanted to show us how much it's adapted. So, what did you think of those? If one of them stuck out to you, let me know which one it was. And if you have one of your own, I have an email down in the description that you can send it to if you'd like to. Also down there are links to a PayPal and a Patreon if you would like to donate to the channel that way. And if you liked the video, then please feel free to like and subscribe and leave a comment and all that good stuff. And I will see you in the next one. Thank you for pulling up a stump with me. Thank you for watching. I'll put up a couple more videos up here at the end of the video in case you want something else to watch. And I'll see you in the next one. Have a good week.